My dear friends, I do not often begin a concert with spoken words, but this is a special case. When I was met a few days ago at the Munich airport, I was asked by my driver, who turned out to be a passionate music lover, tell me, who is this Chales Ives? A Frenchman like Yves Montand, or an Englishman like King Charles II, or what? And so, after a few more such questions, I began to realize that some explanation would be necessary, not only in the program notes, which you can easily read tonight later in bed, nor even in the interval when it's already too late because the piece has been played. One must come to hear Ives' music with some idea of where he stands in the history of American music. Yes, Chales Ives was American, and he stands at the very beginning of what may properly be called American music, at the very beginning of this century. He was born and raised in the rural state of Connecticut and went to Yale University there in New Haven, where he learned all the rules of music very academically from his master Horatio Parker, who knew more about music academically than anybody around. So he learned all these rules and immediately set about breaking them. He was always, from that moment on, flouting convention. Even in the Second Symphony we're about to hear, which he wrote only a few years out of school. Imagine, he finished the work in 1901, and it was never played until 1951, half a century later. I'm very proud to have done that premiere with the New York Philharmonic. But why then did this piece have to wait so long to be heard? Not only because Ives' music was so peculiar and difficult to decipher, and it still is, believe me, but also because nobody cared much about American music, and so almost nobody played it. But mainly because performers, including conductors, did not get his message, which is the message of a greatly gifted primitive. And the trouble with primitives in any art form, painting, poetry, or music, is that they come a dime a dozen. You can trip over them in the streets. Anyone can present himself as a primitive when they might be quite simply untalented, or just lazy, or money-minded, or all three at once. And this is particularly true in music because music is so evanescent and hard to judge and so abstract that all kinds of new waves and new age musics and punk minimalisms can be passed off as primitivism. Chales Ives, on the other hand, was an authentic primitive. He was a country boy at heart, and although he was officially in the insurance business, and very successful at it too, his whole real life was composing music. Even though his business life eventually took him to New York City, he always returned to Connecticut, to Danbury, Connecticut, to that small town life that he loved, and to the musical memories of his childhood, the local marching bands, the fiddling, the fifing at barn dances, the hymns, the ragtime, the patriotic songs, the sentimental tunes and folk ditties. All these haunted his music as long as he lived. But strangely enough, much of the excitement in recent years about Ives has been based on his qualities as a pioneer. For example, he experimented with atonality way before Schoenberg, and with free dissonance way before Stravinsky, with quarter tones way before Alois Haba, with multiple rhythms, still today so complicated they can hardly be performed accurately. But the true measure of his greatness is that even those works which do not rely mainly on such experimentation, works which look simple enough on the page, even academic, still, for all their simplicity and easy listenability, carry a strong personal and original message. And this Second Symphony is such a work. It contains very few problems of dissonance, or what used to be called modernistic techniques. Its only problem is one of attitude, our attitude as well as his. Just try to identify with the young Ives, a mere 27 years old, living in a country and a community where being a musician was considered vaguely reprehensible and not red-blooded American and slightly unmanly, and trying withal to write down the sound images of his world. And this music he heard inside himself was a combination derived from the great works of the German tradition, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, Wagner, plus the local music he had already lived with. Hymns, folk songs, patriotic songs, and marches, the sound of Salvation Army bands, college songs, and the like. All of these can be found in this Second Symphony, from Beethoven's Fifth to the fiddling of Turkey in the Straw. You know, Barndine said, "Could you do that?"
I know somebody who would love to.
Can you do that? Can you stand up and do it? You don't have to look at the notes. Not bad, huh? Imagine that mixed with Beethoven's Fifth. And that's not all. You will also hear references to other classical works, to Brahms' Symphonies 1 and 3, and to Wagner's Tristan and Walküre, to Bach, to Bruckner, to Dvorak. But the Ives Symphony never sounds like Brahms or Wagner or Dvorak. It sounds like Ives. That's what I meant by calling him an authentic primitive. His music has all the freshness of a naive American wandering in the grand palaces of Europe, like some of Henry James' Americans Abroad, or perhaps better still, like Mark Twain's Innocents Abroad. The European spirit has, by some Connecticut alchemy, been Americanized. In other words, Ives had a way of tossing odd bits of Americana into the European soup pot, thus making a whole new symphonic brew out of it. That Turkey in the Straw that you just heard so admirably playing, mixed with Brahms' Third Symphony, produces a brand new concoction, very unexpected, very American in flavor, sort of like speaking German with an American accent, or better still, like speaking German with a Bavarian twang. The list of these oddments of Americana is a curious mixture. Besides Turkey the Straw, you'll hear such patriotic melodies as America the Beautiful. America, America, of course you all know that. God shed his grace on thee. The part that's quoted, you should listen for in that gorgeous third slow movement, is the next line. And crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You will hear a lot of that, as well as our super patriotic Columbia, the gem of the ocean, the home of the brave and the free, which finally emerges triumphant at the end and played by all the trombones together while the rest of the orchestra was playing 5 other themes. Want to give us that, trombones? All these patriots' devotion. Then there are 5 or 6 hymn tunes, including Bringing in the Sheaves, Bringing in the Sheaves. You all know that. And another one that you may not all know, When I survey the wondrous cross. I'm not in very good voice today. You'll also hear phrases that sound like folk songs by our beloved Stephen Foster, like way down upon the Swanee River, far, far away. That's called the old folks at home. I think enough of my trying to be Fischer Dieskau. Let's hear one of the Old Black Joe, one of his most famous songs by, let's say, the cello. Right? More. It's a shame to stop here. It's so beautiful. But you'll get to hear that in the symphony. And you must admit it's better than my singing. Or suddenly a wild, sudden reference to the military bugle call, Reveille, will jump out of the orchestra. Could we hear that? Great. And that's only a short list I've been giving you. But all this, alongside Bach, Brahms, and Wagner, instead of making a hodgepodge, a goulash, turns out to be a real work. Original, eccentric, naive, and as full of charm as an old lace-trimmed Christmas card, but one which just might explode in your hands as you open it, because Ives had a wicked sense of humor and deliberately set out to deflate every kind of pomposity. I think you'll know what I mean when you hear the final chord of the symphony. So you see, Ives is a very special case, and we can't help feeling warm and sympathetic toward what in less gifted hands would be nothing but inexpert composing and some not very funny jokes. In fact, there are those who think that Ives' Second is still the most beautiful symphony ever written by an American. And perhaps it is because, like most of his music, it comes to us so full of his brave resolve to be American and to write American music in the face of a diffident, uninterested, and uncaring world. But we've all come a long way since then, so I hope you will agree after you've heard this wonderful work.